Tomas Cornejo tore the rancher's cattle draft numbered 2.5 at the counter and let both pieces fall into the brass wastebasket because the head cashier, Harlan Meacham, ordered him to. The paper made a dry sound, louder than Delgado's breathing on the other side of the counter. Jose Maria Delgado stood with one hand still open, the hand that had held the draft. He had not moved since Meacham came out from the back ledger cage, set the open ledger on the counter, and pointed at the page. Tomas had ducked his head, folded the blue-green draft once across its printed number, and pulled. The tear split the number down the middle and left a white edge that curled against the brass rim of the basket. Meacham laid both palms flat on the counter, one on either side of the wastebasket, and looked past Delgado toward the street door. His voice carried the same flatness he used when a cattle shipper tried to draw against a herd that had not reached the yards. The draft's received ledger has no matching remittance for a draft numbered 2, Meacham said. He pronounced each word as if the paper had already been burned. Delgado's hand closed slowly. He looked at the 2 pieces lying in the basket. One half showed his own name in Tomas's neat copy hand. The other half showed the bank's receiving stamp, the date blurred but readable. Tomas recognized that stamp. It was the one he had pressed onto the numbered draft 2 weeks ago, the same day the second remittance slip came in from the Kansas City cattle buyer. He had taken the slip from the mail packet and carried it into the ledger cage. The draft number had caught his eye. Instead of copying the slip into the main entry page, he had set it flat on the desk and reached for the glue pot. He could see his own hand brushing paste across the back. The memory was small and hot, like a match held too long. Meacham did not look at him. "Sweep the paper out with the evening trash," Meacham said. Delgado said something low in Spanish, not to Meacham, not to Tomas, but to the air over the brass basket. The bottom half of the torn draft still showed the bank's receiving stamp, and Tomas watched it as if the ink were a live claim. He did not sweep anything yet. The bank's street-level room had gone very still. The other clerk's pen had stopped. The spring dust in the door glass moved with a wagon passing, and Tomas heard his own pulse in the space where a paid draft should have been. Meacham closed the ledger and slid it under his arm. The other clerk did not look up. Tomas stayed behind the counter, with his hands at his sides. He did not reach for the wastebasket, not yet. Delgado did not move away from the counter. His boots were caked with the gray clay from south of the Arkansas, and his coat smelled of stock pens. "I sold 2 lots of beeves to the same Kansas City buyer," Delgado said. His voice was steady, but he gripped the counter edge until his knuckles paled. "The first draft paid for the first lot. This one is for the second. The money belongs to me." He pointed at the basket without looking inside it. Meacham turned the key in the ledger cabinet and then faced him. "The first draft is in the book," Meacham said. "There is no second line. The bank cannot pay on paper with no remittance behind it." Tomas heard the words as if they were the last line of an entry. He had been the one to handle that second slip. He had not entered it. Now the bank held no record because of his omission. The blank line was not in the page Meacham had shown, but it still pressed against Tomas's chest. No one else in the room knew that blank belonged to him. Meacham fit the ledger into the cabinet and pulled the door shut. The lock clicked. "Forget it," Meacham said. "The bank examiner comes in 2 days. I will not carry unrecorded paper from a torn draft and have him ask why it was paid." He tapped the locked cabinet once. His cuff left a small mark on the dark metal. "I took a bad draft last fall, and I will not be made a fool twice," Meacham said. "Unrecorded paper is waste." The word waste fell directly into the basket, where the 2 halves lay still. Delgado turned from the counter. He pulled a long pay envelope from inside his coat, folded it once against his leg, and slid it back empty. He did not look at Tomas. The front door stayed open a moment, letting in the spring air and the sound of a horse shifting at the rail. Tomas watched the envelope fold. It was the same kind the bank used for cattle payments. and it had come in with Delgado, expecting to leave with paper that meant money. Now it held nothing. Delgado unhitched his horse outside. The door swung back and the glass quivered. Tomas kept his eyes on the basket, where the stamped bottom half still faced upward. His hands wanted to reach in. He did not. After closing, Tomas did not go out with the other clerk. He waited until the front door was bolted and the evening lamp had been turned low. Then he took the small key from his own pocket, the one Meacham allowed him for the ledger cabinet, and unlocked the drawer where the day's cancelled paper waited. The brass wastebasket had not been emptied. The torn halves of draft number 2 lay where they had fallen, one half tucked under the other. Tomas lifted them out with 2 fingers. The ink had smeared a little where Delgado's sleeve or the basket's rim had pressed one edge. He set the halves on the counting table and smoothed them flat with the side of his hand. The receiving stamp on the bottom half was whole. The draft number, the date, and the amount were all there. 2 weeks old, drawn on the same Kansas City cattle buyer, payable to Jose Maria Delgado. Then he pulled the draft's received ledger from the cabinet. Meacham had locked it, but Tomas knew the second key hung inside the top drawer, kept there for the junior copyist after the day's rush. He turned the ledger over, not to the main page, but to the back cover. The cloth cover came away a little from the sewn spine. Inside, the pasted remittance slip waited. It was thin paper, slightly yellow at the edges, and the paste had dried in hard brown patches. Tomas read the figures without speaking. The slip recorded $1,170 received in the bank's mail packet 2 weeks earlier for draft number 2. It was signed by the Kansas City buyer. In the right-hand margin were Tomas's own initials, written in the green ink he used for transfers. The slip had been pasted flat across the inside cover, not entered. The second line on the slip was the only record. The amount matched the torn draft exactly. That was the proof Delgado needed. It was also the evidence that would point straight back to Tomas. He lifted one corner of the pasted slip with his fingernail, easy, because the glue had gone brittle. The slip started to tear along its edge. He stopped. The small tear moved no more than a quarter inch, but it was enough. The lamp burned on, making the paper's shadow long across the desk. Tomas set the slip down again and pressed the corner flat. It would not lie perfectly. The tear stayed white. Tomas turned the ledger to the main page and ran his finger down the draft's received lines for the month. The first entry was there, draft number 1, to the same Kansas City buyer for $2,040. The line was balanced. Beside the ledger, in the brown paper file, he found the signed contract Delgado had brought for the first lot. The buyer's signature matched the signature on the pasted slip. The 2 drafts belonged together. A clean copy of both lines would make the missing entry right. No one would need to know that the slip had once been hidden in the back cover, but the smear of glue on the back of the slip was still on Tomas's thumb. He wiped it on his trouser leg. The mark stayed, light brown against the dark wool. It was his error, set there by his own hand. He took a clean sheet of paper, the half-line copy sheet the bank used for remittance transfers, and wrote the first line slowly. Draft number 1, amount, buyer, selling party. The pen dug a little at the end of each letter. Then he paused with the pen above the second line. If he wrote the second line now, the entry would stand. Delgado could be paid. The bank examiner would pass the books, but the slip would still carry his initials on the back cover. He could not remove it without leaving a tear. He could not copy it without knowing the omission was his. The smear on his thumb had dried. He pressed his thumb against the blotter and left a small brown mark, no larger than a seed. The night watchman's boots stopped at the back door. The lamp still burned past closing. Tomas heard the watchman tap the door twice, pause, then move on. He tore the clean half-line copy from the pad, folded it, and slid it under the blotter. The blank second line seemed louder than any entry. He covered the lamp with the tin shade, and the back room went dark, except for the slip on the desk, which stayed white in his mind even after his eyes adjusted. The next morning, before the bank opened, Tomas straightened his coat and carried the 2 torn halves and the lifted remittance slip into President Ansel Flood's small office at the rear. The slip was still attached at one corner, the tear no worse than it had been. The torn halves of draft number 2 were pressed between 2 clean sheets of bank paper. Flood stood at his desk, reading the mail with his left hand and holding a cup of coffee with his right. He looked up when Tomas did not sit. Tomas laid the 2 halves on the desk first, then the slip. The slip curled a little in the morning air. Flood set the coffee down. "Mr. Cornejo," Flood said, "what is this?" Tomas swallowed. He had planned to say he had found the remittance. He could have said the entry had been misplaced. But the slip was in his own handwriting, with his own initials on it, and the tear in the paper was small but real. His mother and 2 younger brothers waited on his Saturday pay. The bank examiner was due in 2 days. Meacham had told him to forget the matter. All of that ran through him, and he set it aside. "The missing entry was my failure," Tomas said. "I received the second remittance slip for draft number 2. I pasted it inside the back cover of the ledger and never copied it into the main page. Then yesterday I tore the draft because Mr. Meacham ordered me to, and the draft was real." He stopped. His voice had not been loud, but it filled the small room. Flood did not answer at once. He pulled the 2 halves toward him and fitted the edges together. The receiving stamp joined. The draft number joined. Then he looked at the pasted slip. Flood's expression did not change beyond a tightening at the corner of his mouth. He opened the office door. "Mr. Meacham," Flood said, "bring the daybook." Tomas saw Meacham's hand close on the cabinet key as he turned from the front counter. Meacham did not look at Tomas, only at the slip and the mended draft. The key turned in the cabinet with a short metal sound. Tomas stayed where he was, with the edge of Flood's desk under his fingertips. He did not know if he would leave the bank before noon or not. Meacham brought the daybook and laid it open on Flood's desk. Flood moved the torn halves aside and read the first draft entry, then the second. He set the pasted slip next to the open page and traced the line with his finger. No one spoke. Outside, the front door was still locked, but the day's light had begun to fill the banking room. Flood straightened. "The second draft is backed," Flood said. "The bank's own remittance account will pay Mr. Delgado." He took up his pen, wrote the order to pay from the remittance account, and sanded it. Then he looked at Tomas without heat. "That was the bank's own error, and you mended it, sir." The word hung in the air. Tomas felt his back straighten before he could stop it. He had never been called sir in that room, not by the president, not by Meacham. He did not know where to put the word, so he held it. Flood turned to Meacham. "You will keep your post, Mr. Cornejo," Flood said. "Every remittance transfer from this day will require Mr. Meacham's counter-signature. That is no punishment. It is protection for the bank and for you." Meacham's face was tight, but he nodded. Flood opened the front door and signaled across the street. Delgado came over slowly, his hat in his hand. He did not look at the torn draft on the desk until Flood pushed it toward him. "The draft is honored, Mr. Delgado," Flood said. "Please sign the payment book." Delgado signed his name with a steady hand, took the paper receipt, and folded it into the empty envelope he had kept in his coat. He nodded once to Tomas, not to Meacham, and left. The door stayed open behind him. Meacham drew the corrected line in the daybook with a straight pen, without speaking. The ink was green, the same as Tomas's own. Tomas watched the line dry. It did not smudge. Tomas kept his old post. The dock was a half-day's pay for the original omission, taken from the same Saturday envelope he picked up for his mother and 2 younger brothers. It was not a small thing. He counted the coins out on the kitchen table the evening after payday and separated the half-day's dock before he handed the rest to his mother. She did not ask. He did not offer. His mother counted the coins again and set them in the blue bowl by the stove. The house was quiet in the way a house gets when the rent has been paid but not the medicine. That price would not come again, he told himself, and the telling was as much pain as the docked silver. From that week on, every remittance transfer Tomas received had to be copied into the main ledger in green ink, then signed by him in full and countersigned by Meacham before the paper could rest in the Kansas City remittance drawer. Meacham said the word countersign as if it had the weight of a loaded gun. But he signed. The bank examiner came 2 days later, read the corrected line, checked the pasted slip against the daybook, and passed the books. He did not ask how the slip had come to the back cover, and no one told him. The drawer stayed closed. Tomas stayed at his desk. At the end of the day, he smoothed a clean sheet of paper over the blotter, set the pen in the green ink well, and locked the ledger cabinet with the small key. The key turned true. The brass wastebasket was empty. Tomas did not keep a piece of the torn draft. He remembered it anyway.